words need to be spoken. My request was answered. I say no more, but thank you. Well, things very saying about me. Sorry about that. That was disgusting.
I think you might be right.
Apologies. So, carrying on from Mark's Gospel, chapter 2. I think we'll probably finish chapter 2 tomorrow. I think we will. I think we will. We're on chapter 3 and it's only taken us, 3 days to do chapter 2, and it took us, 13 days to do chapter 1. Whew. Might take us 3 hours to finish chapter 3. 5 minutes to finish chapter 4. So today's reading, I wonder if I should give a summary. Nah. Yeah, I will. I'll give a brief summary. Jesus is continuing his ministry. He's continuing to build up his inner forum, his inner core. These disciples, he's invited yet another man to join him. And the people that he's invited are, so he's got fishermen, he's got a tax collector so far, as far as we're aware, because we're reading Mark's Gospel as if we've never read it before. So fishermen and tax collectors. Fishermen were classed as unclean because they handled fish. And the religious law, the religious Jewish law there was a strong emphasis on cleanliness. It's a wee bit like today, another parallel. We're washing our hands wherever we go, wherever we touch. If I pick my nose, I've got to wash my hands. If I clap the dogs, I've got to wash my hands. If I'm outside, my hands are on the door handle of my door. I've got to wash my hands. Well, that was the equivalent of this strict religious code that so many people had to follow. They never had a choice. So fishermen were one group of people who were classed as unclean. Tax collectors, because they were handling fish. The only reason that they could be clean, every time they handled the fish, they would need to wash their hands. Now, I know fishermen, that would just be an impossibility. They would never catch any fish if they spent all the time washing their hands. So tax collectors, I've said that word before, they were regarded as the scum of the earth because they worked for the Romans. They were the bad guys. And even their Jewish neighbours despised them, not just the Romans, but tax collectors, because they defrauded people. No, if it cost you 5 pence to go through a toll booth, the tax collectors would charge you 10 pence and pocket 5 and give the 5 to whoever was in charge. So they were cheats and they were scoundrels and they were nasty and they were, and yet, so this is, so far, these people, fishermen, 4 fishermen at least, 1 tax collector, are Jesus' buddies, his followers, the ones that are going to carry his message on after he has gone. We don't know if he's gone yet because we don't know that bit of the story, even though we're in Holy Week. I've decided just to continue and do something maybe different over the weekend, maybe Friday, maybe tomorrow. I don't know what I'm doing. I know I'm here and I've got a plate of custard creams at my feet. So, I'm still in the summary, aren't I? Yeah, I'm still in the summary. So Jesus is his reputation is building. Those religious polis don't like him. Oh, he's out of step. He's out of step with the way it's been. They don't like that. Oh, no. He has to toe the line. So far, he's doing the very opposite. He's not towing any line whatsoever. He's gathering people who are seen as the scum of the earth, the unclean, the ostracised, the people that we're not very keen on. And he's gathering people to him. And the charge put to him today is that he's not fasting, unlike John's disciples. Now remember, the last time we spoke about John, he had ended up in the clinky. And we don't know why. And we don't know what's going to happen to him, because we haven't read Mark's Gospel together. So John's disciples, and of course Jesus was one of John's disciples. That's not in the Bible. We just need to take it from me that he was. Part of their spirituality was to fast. Jesus is not into that. He's the very opposite. I'm not into that. So that is the charge that the Pharisees put to Jesus. John's disciples fasted, your disciples don't. Nah. And, well, you don't know that yet because I haven't read it, but I'm going to read it and then I'll give you an explanation. So we're at Mark 2, nearly finished, Mark chapter 2, and verse 18. And I'm just going to read the whole section. So that's 18 to 22. Now John's disciples and the Pharisees were fasting. Some people came and asked Jesus, "How is it that John's disciples and the disciples of the Pharisees are fasting, but yours are not?" I told you. Jesus answered, "How can the guests of the bridegroom fast while he is with them? They cannot, so long as they have him with them. But the time will come when the bridegroom will be taken from them, and on that day they will fast. No one sews a patch of unshrunk cloth on an old garment. If he does, the new piece will pull away from the old, making the tear worse. And no one pours new wine into old wineskins. If he does, the wine will burst the skins, and both the wine and the wineskins will be ruined. No, he pours new wine into new wineskins." Now, I've turned the camera away from myself and I've focused the camera onto some of my custard creams as a way of illustrating a point. And the point that I want to illustrate, the point that I want to make is that these custard creams are all crying out to me right now, "Eat me, eat me." And I'm not going to, because that's how disciplined I am. I can look at these custard creams and say, no, I'm not going to eat you and dip you into a cup of tea. And the reason I'm not going to do that is because I just had about 3 custard creams about 5 minutes ago. So the temptation isn't there. But the point I want to make is about fasting. And Jesus talks about fasting in the story which I just shared with you. Now, fasting, as you probably know, is deliberately giving up normally food for a period of time. And you do that for a whole number of reasons. The case in point today is that it was for religious reasons. So if you deprive yourself of food, the more, theoretically, you look forward to your next meal, to the next time you can eat. So it's a wee bit like giving up things for Lent, giving up chocolate or giving up your sweeties or whatever, so that at the end of the 40 days, you will appreciate the sweeties and the chocolate, which always strikes me as a bit of an irony. So you lose a bit of weight and then you stick it back on again after the 40 days. But the point I'm making here is that let me backtrack a wee bit. There was only one day in the Jewish calendar where it was compulsory to fast, and that was the Day of Atonement. And that was the one day everybody and their granny gave up eating. That one particular day, the Day of Atonement. But there were those Pharisees, these strict religious individuals, not all of them, some of them. Some Pharisees took that a step further and fasted twice a week on Mondays and Thursdays. You see how knowledgeable I am. I bet you're glad that you've tuned in. You thought, I never knew that. If you tune in, I'll teach you. I'll show you the way. So Mondays and Thursdays, these strict religious individuals would fast. But my feeling is, again, not all of them, but some of them didn't do it for any love of God or for any kind of dedication or for self-discipline. They did it to show other people, look how moral I am, look how good I am, look how perfect I am. And the way they did that is because if you looked at someone who's not eaten for a day, there's very little likelihood that you would look at them and say, you know, that guy hasn't eaten for a day. But you might be able to guess if they changed their appearance. So they didn't need to say anything. You just knew, oh goodness, that individual hasn't eaten. And some of these strict Pharisees would whiten their faces and wear dishevelled clothes. So when you looked at them, especially on a Monday or a Thursday, you would, 2 and 2 would make, well, it would make 4 this time. You would be saying, oh, my, look at them. Look how wonderful they are. So the charge that they brought to Jesus was that John's disciples fasted. Your disciples don't seem to fast. What's going on? They're looking for ways to trip him up. And Jesus is saying, uses the example of a wedding couple. Now, a newly married couple wouldn't normally go away to Mallorca for a week. They would stay at home and they would have an open house where people would come and go for about a week to 10 days, and it was a time of celebration and rejoicing and giving thanks, because life then was incredibly hard. And it was about the one period in a couple's relationship that was deemed happy and celebratory. Because after that week, 10 days had passed, it was work, and then they died relatively young. So that week was a time of celebration, a time of rejoicing, a time of having a party. And it was a religious instruction, well, not so much an instruction, but one of the religious laws that was made, that week, those that were celebrating a couple's wedding were exempt from fasting. So it was the very opposite of starving yourself. It was a case of actually rejoicing and celebrating and being happy. And Jesus is using that wedding illustration to say, these people are my guests. I am the bridegroom. And while they have me, it is a time of rejoicing, of celebrating, of giving thanks, of being grateful. And not the opposite of all of that, starving yourself, depriving yourself, lacking joy, lacking the mood to celebrate. A wee bit of Presbyterianism, sorry. So Jesus was using this illustration, the bridegroom's illustration, to say, while I am here, God has made us, has created us to celebrate our life, to appreciate our life, and not to deny ourselves our life. So I turned the camera towards my custard creams when I was talking about the fasting, first time round about the bridegroom. And now you've got me to explain. The camera is focused on me. Hello. The camera is focused on me for me to give a brief description on this second illustration that Jesus talks about fixing a new piece of cloth onto an old piece of cloth, that sort of thing. That illustration, well, maybe two things, to move in my seat. I love, regardless how you see Jesus or how you view religion, but there's certainly one thing about this man. He uses everyday illustrations that would have been so common to the people in biblical days. Everyday illustrations to make a point. He was a storyteller. And I sometimes think that the best people, whether they're in the church or in education or in some field of communication, the best people that can communicate a message are the storytellers, because you can visualize the story in your head. Oh, I did that. That was nerves again. You can visualize the story in your head. You can picture it. It's like reading a book and there's illustrations in the book. You can look at the picture. And I've already shared this with you. I like pictures in a book. You can say, oh, is that what it looks like? Oh, yeah. It helps. It helps the imagination. So Jesus is forever using everyday illustrations that people would know. And they would say, oh, I get that. You know, new cloth on old cloth. Oh, I get that. And of course you would get that as well, because you're all intelligent. Of course you are. So the point that I think that Jesus is making about the cloth, he's saying, this is my take on it. Well, I'm going to tell you a story. Here is a story. This is a true story. When I was a teenager, I lived in Levi's. I think I had Levi pajamas. I just had Levi. I wore jeans all the time, apart from school. That wasn't allowed. But, you know, when I was away from school, when I was an older teenager, I had jeans all the time. I just wore jeans all the time. And I had a denim shirt and jeans. I don't think that would go now. That would look a bit strange, you know. That's too much like a suit. But when I was a teenager, my pals were the same. It wasn't just me, but that was the gear we wore. So I had this denim shirt, which I loved, absolutely loved. It just fitted me. You know how you get clothes that fit you, and you're thinking, I like this. This is my favourite shirt. But I wore it so often that the collar began to fade and then fray and then actually break away. And I would sew it, because I'm a new age guy. I don't need people to sew for me. I can sew. So I would sew the collar back on until holes developed. So an old pair of jeans which I used to wear, I would cut them up because they were about to die as well, and I would cut bits out my jeans and sew them on my shirt. So it looked as if I had this mottled effect. But I still liked it. But there came a point I could no longer sew a patch on my shirt because I was sewing patches onto the patches. And by that time, it just looked ridiculous. So this is my take with Jesus. He is saying that we patch things up to an extent, as we all do, but there comes a time, like my denim shirt, you can no longer patch it up. You have to get rid of, you have to start again. I think he was hinting at the fact that the religious authorities' relationship with God and how they were imparting that information to the people had become corrupt. You couldn't patch it up. It had passed the patching up stage. Do you know what? I need to stop there. You know the plate of custard creams? My dog is pawing the plate, so I'm going to lift the plate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, it's still 42 there. So Jesus is saying, we can no longer patch up this religion. It's like a new start. It's like a new beginning. And I am at the heart of this reformation, this revolution, this new beginning. Now, if the Pharisees' noses were out of joint beforehand, oh my giddy Auntie Mary, their noses were completely broken by this stage, because they too are beginning to pick up the hint that he wasn't just preaching a new message, he was indirectly having a go at them as well and accusing them of continuing with this corrupt religion and worship which was meaningless. And I think this is a very important point for the church today. When we get to the point where the rituals and the symbolism that we provide on a Sunday, and ministers and priests and pastors are often at fault because we are the leaders of the churches. So I take a lot of this blame on board myself. But when we continue a pattern that has existed for hundreds of years without asking ourselves, why are we doing this? And when our energies are concentrated within the worship and within the building, there has to be an element of corruption, because Jesus' whole ministry was outside in the community with people who needed a new and reformed way of seeing God, and he provided it. But if our energies are concentrated within the building, and not all churches do this, and I don't even think my church does it, we all do it to a certain extent. But one of the good things about virtually all the churches that I've been involved in, I've done it again, is that there are so many good people who take their faith, their ministry, their individual ministry, and they go out into the community, and very quietly they work away. God is not looking for tele-evangelists or for people to share in testimonies. He's looking for people to bring about the kingdom. And we can bring about the kingdom in so many different ways. It's not look at me, look at me, look at me. It's the very opposite. It's just very quietly doing good to your neighbour and to your community. Now, of course, this is when, if you continue with Mark's Gospel, there is more controversy that springs up. But this, of course, is somebody will ask me, and if you haven't asked me, you're probably thinking about it. What is the difference between someone who does good work and is a member of the church, and someone who does good work and has no interest in the church? There's no interest in the church. Well, theoretically, there isn't any major difference, but the person who has an association with the church may well feel that they are doing good works because it's expected of them. Now, I'm going to leave all this in, because when I'm sharing this, I'm thinking, oh, should I put this in? I'm going to keep it in. But I'm going to counter that, because I also think that they do it because they want to do it, and they just so happen to have a belief, maybe a strong belief, or maybe a questioning belief, but they do it because it's part of their nature. So there is no difference really between those people who have a connection with the church and who do good works, and those people who have no connection with the church and do good works, unless some of those individuals in the churches act like those Pharisees, wearing the dishevelled clothes and whitening their faces so that people will look at them and say, aren't they wonderful? Now, thankfully, I don't know anybody like that. Probably, when I was first getting into the church, way back in the 19th century, there were people like that. There would be people who would dress on a Sunday and want people to look at them, who wanted to give the impression that they were better than their neighbours. So that was common in the area that I grew up in. But I'm thankfully, I don't think that exists anymore. People go to the church because it's not compulsory. It's not expected. They don't need to. But I think people go to the church because they're going there to discover something, not just about themselves, but they're going there to try and discover something about spirituality. And I think that's a good thing. And I would encourage it. And I'm going to stop there because I have custard creams to eat.